Hey everybody, it's Brett, and thank you for dropping by or returning to my channel. Well, here we are. We're in the middle of December. It's almost my birthday, kind of magical, and we're coming up with all the best of lists. I'm going to kick mine off with talking about debuts, the best debuts this year. As of this moment, which is December 10th, I read 140 books. I'm going to try to finish a few more, but out of all of those books, I have read 36 debuts. I don't anticipate reading any more debuts this year, so this list is pretty solid. So stick around. All right, so I actually had to pick 11 books, you guys. I really tried to narrow it down to 10, but it was too difficult, and I feel like, well, it's my choice. So I'm picking 11. I have to say that these debuts were really one of the most exciting things about this year. I read so many incredible authors who I had never discovered, who clearly I had never known before because they hadn't published before, at least not a novel. It gave me a great feeling to know that there are incredible works still being produced, that there are publishers and editors and agents who are discovering some really wonderful, wonderful writers. And I really hope that continues into 2025. So let's kick it off with one of my favorites, although these are all terrific. I did not make this list in any order other than just what the stack is in front of me. And I don't even have all the books because some of them are out in the desert. But first one, Cinema Love by Jim and Tang. This absolutely blew me away. It's about this movie house in China that is used as a rendezvous point for gay men to hook up with each other. But the story is not really about that. The story is about the women that are involved with the men. One of them is a woman who works in the movie theater, but a group of them immigrate to New York City, to Chinatown in the 1980s. And that really becomes the story. But it's these women, some of these who become wives of these men. It is so beautiful and such an original story, gutting at times. It's really special. So much about immigration and the immigrant experience, which seems so pertinent and relevant today, but a really, really, really spectacular debut. That's number one. Oh my, these are all so good. Number two is August Thompson's Anyone's Ghost. This is a book that is designed for anyone who has been desperately in love with another person. And this is about a young guy who we follow him, kind of a coming of age story, but he's a little, shy. He's kind of just coming into his own, and he meets a slightly older guy who he meets on a job over the summer, and they become friends. And this guy is literally everything he either wants to be or be with. And it's that weird line that gets drawn between infatuation with someone and being in love with someone and being aroused by someone. All of these things very complex and tied up in these kind of sparring of emotions. The book opens with this incredible line, which it says, "It took 3 crashes to kill Jake." Jake is the older guy who the protagonist is in love with. So you go into the book knowing that at some point Jake is going to die, and I'm not giving you any kind of spoiler because it's the first line of the book. But that ratchets it up for this element of melancholy that kind of infuses the whole story. But it's really incredibly beautiful, heartbreaking. I loved it, loved it, loved it so much. So that's number two. Number three is Oye by Melissa Moguillon. What's so fantastic about this book is the way that the narrative is constructed. It is about a family in Miami, and the young woman who's telling the story, the entire thing is told through phone conversations with her sister. It's all one-sided. It's only her side of the conversation. And that sounds really strange, but I'm telling you, it clicks in pretty fast and you just kind of go with it. And the big kind of dilemma is their grandmother is dying, who is kind of the matriarch of the family. At the same time, a hurricane is bearing down on Florida. This is also a fantastic audiobook, but it is, talk about a voice, talk about a hilarious voice. It's so funny. It is so winning. Melissa is an absolute delight. So I'm thrilled to be able to say this is, I think, one of the best debuts of the year. Henry Henry by Alan Bratton. God, did I love this. I listened to this on audio. I'm going to read you the opening blurb of the book. It says, it's London in 2014, and Hal Lancaster's son and heir of Henry, Duke of Lancaster, is in a holding pattern. His mother is dead. His father is dying or remarrying or both. His siblings are fighting. His internship is pointless, and nobody will leave him alone. Everything is as it should be, and yet nothing is right. Over the course of a year of partying, drinking, and flirting to dubious consequence, Hal is tested by brutal family legacies, Catholic guilt, and the terrifying possibility of being loved, all of which is complicated by a pattern of abuse that threatens to chase Hal into adulthood. The House of Lancaster will never be the same. Crackling with intelligence and wit, Henry Henry is a brilliant recasting of the Henriade, in which Hal Lancaster is a queer protagonist for a new era. Alan Bratton arrives as a successor to Waugh with his lush, stylish novel of family, legacy, and what it means to be alive today. I think that says it all and so much better than I ever could have. I just ate this up. I loved the decadence of this world. I loved this absolutely fucked up and bratty protagonist. I was here for the whole thing. So, and again, fantastic audio. All right. Number 5, Housemates by Emma Copley Eisenberg. This is one of these books that surprised me this year. I didn't know what to expect on this. The story of these 2 women who become housemates in a larger house situation where there's many more women living together. But one of the women is a photographer, and her professor at the university that she went to has died. And upon his death, one of the things in his will is it says that he is leaving all of his work to this girl. So she and this roommate set across on a road trip to retrieve the work. The other woman is a journalist. So they've decided one is going to write about it, and the other is going to document it through photography. And the story that unrolls as they travel. It is, again, so surprising, really wonderful characters. I was just so smitten with these 2 ladies and what develops between the 2 of them. I thought it was so beautiful, and also just an incredible meditation on art and artists and the sexes and sexuality. It's really stunning. The next book is The Safekeep by Yael Vanderbuden. So this was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It is now longlisted for the Aspen Words Literary Prize. I read this back when it was in galley form, and I read it on a plane, and I couldn't put it down. And I had no idea what was coming, but oh my God. This is about a woman who lives in a small Dutch town. Her brother has been away. Her parents are passed away. She is very tightly wound. I don't think you would say she's a friendly person. And her brother arrives with this woman that he claims is his fiance. She's very attractive. She's very gregarious, very outgoing, very friendly. And he tells his sister, I want her to stay with you for a while I go back and finish this work that I'm doing, which his sister's adamantly against. She doesn't want to be sharing her house with anyone, least of all some stranger who seems to be, just a ball of energy and light. But regardless, they do. And what slowly starts to happen between these two women, our protagonist begins to think maybe she's going crazy because she's finding that things are missing and misplaced. She doesn't know yet if this woman is stealing things. So this mystery starts to happen, or you start to wonder, do we have an unreliable narrator? I'm not going to tell you anything else. Aside to say it gets super sexy, almost overwhelmingly so. Yale Vandervouden does to Pears what Call Me By Your Name did for Peaches. Wow. And the ending of this, I personally never saw coming. So this, for me, was a treat and one of the best of the year. Next is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lenin. Who would have ever thought to drop in to the Peloponnesian War and make a story about the Syracusans who have captured the Athenians and decide to take the prisoners and put on a play, specifically Medea, and use all the prisoners to produce this play, and these two warring sides come together. I never would have thought it, but let me tell you something. It is, first of all, so funny. This protagonist, his name is Lampo, and he and his friend Gellin, they decide to do this, and they are going to act as producers and directors. They're going to audition the prisoners and go through the whole thing and then put on this play. It is so fantastic. It is so moving. It is such an interesting examination of not only war and the aftermath and the brutality of it, but also art and the way that art can bridge people. It is fantastic. Also, why wouldn't you want to get a book with googly eyes on the cover? But I think this is one of those books that has been overlooked in some ways. I know it has got a lot of love from Waterstones, but it is really a truly, truly, truly special book. Something that I read earlier in the year that has really stuck with me. And again, that's one of the main reasons that it's on this list today, is because if a book can resonate with me almost a year later, especially with all the stuff that came between, well, that's a damn good book. And that is Hard by a Great Forest by Leo Vardiashvili. This takes place in Soviet Georgia, and a father and his two children have escaped, and they've left their mother behind. The idea is once they establish themselves in America, they would send for her and bring her over, but they all couldn't get across. Well, while they're over in America, they get word that their mother dies. And the father, being so bereft, heads back to his native land and disappears. So his two sons decide they're going to go and find out what happened to him. Saba, who is the protagonist of the story, his brother leaves first. Well, his brother disappears as well. So Saba then sets out on this journey to find not only what happened to his father, but his brother as well, and the story that ensues. It is incredible. It is incredible. And I listened to this on audio, and it was narrated by Luke Thompson, and he is just fantastic. He's a truly terrific actor who last year or the year before was in the stage production of A Little Life. Also, people may know him from Bridgerton. He plays, I think, the oldest brother on Bridgerton. He's terrific. This is another book that I feel like because it came out so early in the year, a lot of people missed it. So I would say put it on your radar. It's an epic story. It's so engaging, really, really moving, and everything I love in a book, a big character-driven novel that has huge plot points that is going to pull on your heartstrings a little bit. It's simply fantastic. All right. Well, it wouldn't be a list of mine if it didn't include some Irish writers, and actually Ferdia Lennon, who wrote Glorious Exploits, is also Irish. But the next book is also by an Irish writer who is Alan Muir, and the book is The Coast Road. I first heard about this book because Gillian Anderson just said it was an addictive read, and she loved all the female characters in it so much. It's about a group of women in a small town in Ireland. One of the women comes back into the town. She had been having an affair and had gotten pregnant, and her husband, who was very well loved in the community, had sent her away. And now she's returned to try to pick up their old life. That is one of the stories. Meanwhile, when she comes back into town, she rents a room nearby from a young couple and who are having marital problems, and he is abusive. And then there's a final couple in town whose marriage has just gotten to be kind of loveless, who has a really wonderful relationship. It's not sexual, just an ongoing friendship with the priest in town. All of these women's lives are going to intersect, and what kind of explosive thing is going to happen. I loved this. I loved this so much. Someone said it reminded them very much of like Claire Keegan or Elizabeth Strout, and I get both those comparisons. I think that's, very much kind of what this is. It is some absolutely beautiful writing. It is, like all of the books I've been talking about, such an assured debut. I can't wait to see what Alan Muir comes out with next. But wow, what a truly spectacular debut. Hombrocito by Santiago Jose Sanchez. This is a coming-of-age story about a young queer Cuban immigrant and his mother. And the story of his mother becomes really kind of prevalent in the second half of the book. But it's a really, sometimes I feel like there's been so many coming-of-age stories, but I thought this one was so beautifully written. He's like poet, and the way that he incorporates his mother's story later on in the book is absolutely stunning. It's a terrific narrative, really beautifully done. And again, just a spectacular, spectacular debut. Okay, then last but hardly the least is There is a Rio Grande in Heaven by Ruben Reyes Jr. Now, Ruben is one of the people that have broken my thing that I've said all year, which is, I don't really like short stories. I don't really like short stories. I like short stories when they're as good as every single one of these are. Many of these stories are about the immigration experience. They are so good. They have such incredible and creative points of view. There is one story in here, and they're all so good, but it's called Variations on a Migrant Life, which is written as a choose your own adventure story based on an immigrant life. And oh my gosh, it's fantastic. And it's that kind of creativeness that goes through this whole entire book. He takes something that could be just a straightforward story and puts some kind of really special, I'm covering his name, really special spin on it, which makes them be what could be a good story into what is an absolutely great story. So if you are a short story lover, absolutely get this collection and check these out. And even if you're not like me, and if you're a skeptic and you're always saying, well, there's always some that aren't as good, all of these are great, and it's beautiful. So there's that. All right. And then I have one book I have to give a shout out to, because This is fantastic. And I'm only re-shouting it out because I actually read it at the end of last year because as I was prepping to interview him at the start of this year, and that is Daniel Lefferts' Ways and Means. This begins in 2016, and it's about a young man who's very smart, who has escaped the Rust Belt of the country and has moved to New York City in the hopes to make money and pull his mother out of there as well. He gets involved with two different men, and what happens? It's so smart. And I remember when I was reading it at the end of last year, I was like, I can't believe again, my overlying theme for all of these books, that this is even a debut. It is again such a smart and self-assured piece of literature. It goes through kind of the excesses of New York, both in the fiscal world and also sexually. It bleeds into the Trump administration. It is not to be missed. Another fantastic, fantastic book that I did have to just shout out that I did read last year and absolutely loved it, but it is this year. So there you go. All right. So there are the books. Hopefully there's some of these that are new to you, or maybe they all are, or maybe none of them are, which great. You've read them all. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. I hope you're all having a great week. I will be back next week with more best of on Tuesday. I will be with my friend Tina, who now is also on YouTube. I will link her below because you should follow her. She is fantastic. And we will be talking about runners up to our top 10 of the year. So look for that. And again, thank you for hanging with me, and I will see you all later.